This is Heritage, Barkeep 22, first range report. Let's hit the range. The Heritage Barkeep is 7.95 inches long, 4.86 inches high, 1.5 inches wide, and weighs in at 26 ounces. It has a 2.68 inch barrel, is single action only, and features a manual safety. The firearm comes with one .22 long rifle cylinder. With this cylinder you can use .22 long rifle, .22 long, .22 short, .22 shot, as well as .22 conical breech cap type rounds. So you have quite a few different round options with just that .22 long rifle cylinder. Now you can also use the .22 Magnum cylinders that some Rough Riders come with and that you can also get from the Heritage store. The manual safety is located on the left side of the frame. Push the safety down to fire up and the safety is engaged. Now this is not a transfer bar safety, this is just a frame mounted safety. I believe this was done so that way the trigger on the gun retains what they call the quote 4-click traditional trigger feel of what the cowboy action gun may have had back in the day. Now the first click on the hammer of the 4 will put it into what would have been the traditional safety where the cylinder and the trigger are locked. Now Heritage does not recommend carrying it in that fashion, a safety alone. If you're going to use it with that, they also recommend that you use the frame safety as well. Now in addition to that, like most cowboy action guns, if you were to carry them, Heritage also recommends that you don't have a live round underneath the firing pin, so that way you'd have to cock the gun to put a live round into action, so to speak. Now the Barkeep model does feature, they say it's a 2-inch barrel, it's more like 2.68 inch barrel, and that is a carbon steel barrel. Now speaking of carbon steel, the cylinder included is also a carbon steel cylinder. The frame on this gun is a cast aluminum frame, so keep that in mind. Now another thing to note is the model that we are shooting here today, this has the simulated case hardened finish. So that's not actually a true case hardened firearm here. This is just a simulated case hardened finish. Though I think it looks well enough to play the part, and I'm interested to see how it's going to hold up in the long run. For sights, this firearm features a fixed front blade as the front sight. The rear sight is a frame integrated notch. Both again, are not adjustable. I would say they're the traditional cowboy action style sights. Now with the short barrel, one thing you don't see on this gun is a attached ejection rod. Heritage does include a external one in the box, though thus far I find I've actually been able to use just the cylinder pin to push out my empties when I pop that cylinder out. Now because this is, I think the same as their Rough Rider style 22s, it does use the same cylinders, so if you have the other Heritage Rough Rider line of firearms, I like to do this one Josie Wells style where I just have like 3 cylinders and I just swap them in and out like from the movie and don't even bother having to do the ejection rod thing, at least until I'm done with those 3 cylinders anyway. Now the grips on this gun are actually, I think, surprisingly pretty good for what a lot of people would consider a budget gun. They're comfortable enough, the gun's easy enough to hold. They have a very simple yet appealing design to them. I'd say if you want something fancy, you're going to spend money on it, and if you're going to spend that money, you probably spent more on a more expensive gun anyway. But there's nothing wrong with this gun. There's nothing wrong with the grips. I think it's perfectly serviceable in that regard. Now the trigger on the gun, I would say, it seems just like a standard vanilla single action only cowboy action style trigger. Off my trigger gauge, depending on where you have the gauge on the trigger, it's anywhere plus or minus 3 ounces at a pound, so about a pound and 3 ounces, or Now let's hit the range. And before we do, let's give a nice shout out to our friends at Daryl's Gun Shop. They were nice enough to not only find this nice little Barkeep for me, but then they were nice enough to hold it back for me. So that way when I wasn't able to come in last weekend due to the first snow apocalypse of the year, that this weekend when I made it in, that it was still there for me to actually, then be able to do this nice review and enjoy this fine firearm. So thanks, Daryl's. Really appreciate it, and looking forward to being there. Like always, you guys rock. Now, my overall thoughts after my first range session with this gun, I would say I'm actually very impressed by it. Now, I bought my first Heritage firearm at least 10 years ago, probably more. It's the Bird Head Rough Rider with the 3-inch barrel that I thought was like a sort of like a banker's model, 22, if you will. Now, when I got that gun years ago, was doing some cowboy action shooting with some local groups, and they would occasionally let us do some fun stuff with 22s. And so that was I do like Josie Wales class with 22s and use that, and it was a lot of fun. You'll actually see that gun in the bench in this video and some of the upcoming ones. I've shot that gun a lot. I've never actually had a problem with it. It's shot without fail. Now, is it a perfect gun? No. My 10-year-old plus Rough Rider, it shoots a little left. It's always shot a little left. Some ammo's more left than other. But, for the ranges that I shoot it at and the cowboy action classes that I shot it at, it was perfectly usable, and it hit the targets every time I needed it to, and it works just fine. And it's a lot of fun. And this banker's gun is a lot more of that. Now, at the price point these Heritage products sell at, and with the fixed sights on the models that I have, occasionally getting one where they don't line up exactly perfect. Well, you get what you get. And I'm not going to complain about that. Some people will. I'm not going to. I'm just going to learn to, work with it. Now, so far after day one on the Barkeep that I have, I think the sights are close enough to being right on, left, right, that if there is some variation, that's either going to be me or the ammo. And I don't think it's, any of that's going to be a problem with this gun, which is good. Now, one area that might concern people is the lack of the attached ejection rod. And I'll tell you that compared to my 3-inch model, the ejection rod on that 3-inch model, it's pretty much useless. I'd actually prefer to not have it on that and have the same external ejection rod like this gun comes with. Because on the 3-inch one, you have to use the ejection rod and then still stick your finger in and pull the shells out because the ejection rod is not long enough to actually pop them out like you need it to. So in this case, I think the external ejection rod that's not attached actually is a bonus. And the other thing I really like is that you can use any of the Rough Rider cylinders with this gun, which let me show you how that works. Don't forget to like and subscribe so Freddy gets his biscuits. Now, even though it's probably past its intended range, with the little 2-inch barrel on this gun, if figured, like we do with pretty much all our indoor tests, we might as well eventually push it out to 25 yards and see how it does. So let's see how it did at 25 yards. Now, after day one with this gun, do I think it's the most accurate gun in the world? No. But do I think it is perfectly serviceable for the ranges that I would use it at the 22 cowboy shoots that I would use it at? Most certainly. Considering there that the longest shot I would have to do, even with the rifle, would be 25 yards, to be able to successfully engage a 6-inch target, nonetheless, at 25 yards with this little 2-inch barrel, revolver, that goes to show that someone that actually knows what they're doing and that is a competent shooter could probably do significantly better than even what I could do with this gun. Now you can find these Barkeeps anywhere between, I'd say, $200 and $249, and I would consider it a budget gun in that price range, but I think it certainly fits, and I think you get more than what you would typically expect in a gun in that price range. All of the Rough Riders or Heritage guns that I've used, they've all been extremely reliable. Some accuracy maybe is a little bit off, but if you get one that is accurate and they're all reliable, they're all, it can be very good guns, especially where they're priced. Now, that being said, that price point does mean that you're going to sacrifice in areas like, the finish might not be the most spectacular. You might have some blemishes in areas, and maybe the materials are not the greatest materials you can get out there. But for what it is, this gun is going to work and it's going to last. And it might not last 14 lifetimes, but it'll at least probably last yours. And that's, enough for at least what you're going to pay for it. Now, expect to see this one in multiple videos here in the next few weeks or months here, as we do some more 22 videos while we stock up on other ammo. Now, we are going to compare it to things like the Ruger Single 6, a couple different of those, and we'll even get a little wild and compare it to things like the Henry Mare's Leg, because hey, if you got 22s and you got a few of them, you might as well compare them to what you got just for the fun of it. Because you don't always need to do an apples to apples comparison to do a fun comparison video. So I hope you're looking forward to all those videos just like we are, and found this one useful. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a good day.